Hello and welcome to the second season of the Buyers Agents podcast, brought to you by buyersagents.com.au. I'm your host, Leon Hayes, and I'm joined on this very special edition by our Head of Growth at buyersagents.com.au and Head of Community, Brand Van Zyl. Brand, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Melbourne. It's great to have you here.
Great to be back. Thank you.
So over the past few months, we've been working on how we're going to take the Buyers Agents podcast across Australia. And our first point of call is here in Victoria. We've joined, and we are here to be joined today by Antony Bucello, one of Melbourne's most experienced buyers advocates and Director of National Property Buyers of Victoria. Antony has been involved in the property and financial services for more than 3 decades and has helped clients purchase everything from entry-level homes right through to multi-million-dollar properties across Melbourne and across Victoria. He originally founded and joined National Property Buyers back in 2011 as the state manager and now leads the Victorian operation, specialising in buyers advocacy and vendor advocacy services. Antony is known for his meticulous approach to property selection and negotiation and has been recognised multiple times as both a finalist for the prestigious REI v Buyers Agent of the Year Awards, as well as many other national industry awards. Today we're going to talk about the evolution of buyers agents in Australia, how professional advocates give buyers an edge and how they make that happen in markets that are often moving quite rapidly, and what separates a good property purchase from a great one. This week we're in Melbourne. And we have the absolute pleasure to be able to meet and engage with Antony from National Property Buyers. Antony, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
How have you been?
So far, so good. It's still early in the day, but you can ask me the question again at about 5 or 6 o'clock and I'll let you know how we're going.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast today. You've been one of our earliest supporters at buyersagents.com.au. And for that, we're just really appreciative. You know, it takes a lot to build a business, a lot to gain the trust of people that have been working in the industry for so long, like you have been. And so, firstly and foremost, I just wanted to say thank you. We're so glad to have you on the podcast as our first roadshow guest, and really looking forward to what we can unpack today.
Excellent.
So tell us, you've been in the industry for a number of years. Tell us about your history. How did it first begin?
It was interesting how I sort of fell into buyer advocacy, and it was very, very much when buyer advocacy was in its early stages or very much in its infancy, and it's come a long way since then. But I was in the financial services space, coming from a financial planning background, working in an accounting firm. Also had some mortgage broking experience as well. However, wasn't entirely wrapped with what I was doing, and I came across a gentleman who was starting up a new business. It was a buyer advocacy business, and he needed some assistance and in getting the business off the ground. And my role in the financial services industry was a lot to do with marketing and business development. So I joined him. I quit my job. I joined him as a consultant. So sort of took a bit of a dive into the deep end and worked for myself for a little bit. So he was one of my clients, and just from there, I really was interested in this industry, and called me a mature entrant. I was probably around 30 at the time, so already had really good, I felt, people skills and communication skills, and then it was just learning about real estate basically in order to catapult me into becoming a buyer agent. So
how long ago was that? Was that 2011?
So that was about 2000. So
2000.
Yeah, so 2001 was when it all began. What started off as a back office role became assistant buyer agent, and then buyer agent. And 10 years later, I had an opportunity to start my own business, which was National Property Buyers. So in 2011, we opened the doors in Melbourne. Now 2026, 15 odd years later, I feel we've sort of built a fantastic reputation amongst all other buyer agents in the city, and we continue to go from strength to strength. Built a really close-knit team around me, and we work very closely together and try and give them as much work-life balance as possible, which I think really helps in keeping the team together. And Rob, who's been with me for 15 years, and Joanne, close to 10, I think it is, probably sort of confirms that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw that when we first envisaged of how we were going to go nationally and start speaking with buyers agents and agencies in each state. We really did our research of who we were going to engage with first, and we saw that longevity. And I think that was really important in an industry that's still relatively new, to have such a depth of knowledge, 20, 25 years, but particularly having a business that stood the test of time through all the challenges that Victoria and nationally we've had, and property cycles that have been going on. So you must have seen significant changes in the industry over that time.
Oh, absolutely. And as I said, what started off, and I think when I first started, there might have been a dozen or so buyer agents in Melbourne, or certainly key players. And, you do a Google search now and the industry has just exploded. I still think, though, we've and there's organisations that we're members of, such as Reba and Pippa and stuff, that are doing everything they can to try and just get the education right, the qualifications right, and the ongoing development sort of.
And do you see that as a challenge that the industry's got at the moment, is being able to, being able to educate the people that are actually coming into the market and into the industry themselves, so that they obviously deliver to their customers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, clients are trusting us with, big decisions, and the advice we give is crucial to their future wealth or their future happiness or whatever it may be. And there's many great buyer agents out there that know what they're doing and have been doing it a long time. I do feel, though, there's a lot of new entrants that are doing a short course. There might have been a chef, and all due respects to chefs, or a nurse yesterday, and all of a sudden we've become a buyer agent overnight. And I just feel, and obviously they've got the qualifications, but I don't think they've got the experience yet. So I think we just got to find the right balance there.
And has that role for a buyer's agent actually changed over that period of time that you've been involved? Like, is it, it's now not just buying a property, it's actually holding somebody's hand through the decision-making process, through the research process. I mean, you've got access to data now that you probably didn't have 15 years ago. You've got access to, relationships that you probably didn't have back then. So how has that sort of changed over that period of time?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, just the buyer agency industry or buyer advocacy industry is just sort of become a lot more well-known. And, even selling agents are more than happy to sort of deal with us now, if that makes sense. So from a relationships point of view, I think that's crucial to achieving good results.
They've become more acceptable into buyers.
100%. Yeah. Compared to 20 years ago, where they were all worried if we were involved in a transaction that we may sort of disrupt things.
I'm seeing a few in Queensland that are actually, the majority of the work of the agent is going out to buyers agents rather than dealing directly with the potentially with the buyers themselves. It's like that's where they're predominantly 60, 70, 80% of their business is starting to come from.
Yep, absolutely. And we're seeing a bit of that here now too. And we often get referrals from some selling agents who are, got someone that says, need help buying a property. Well, go and speak to a buyer agent if you need the help. If you can do it yourself, great. But if you need the help, it's worth a chat.
And I think also on that note, people or buyers have a lot more information now, right? So they have a lot more access. And again, to your point about Google, how is it that an individual like yourself or a company like you guys separate yourself from the noise out there?
Oh, and there is a lot of noise out there. And even clients come to us with some of that noise, if you know what I mean. But I think it's really important to really understand what's important and what's not important. And it's not rocket science, it really isn't. But it's really educating clients that not everything on the internet is correct, if you know what I mean. So we subscribe to a lot of databases and information sites and land information sites and so forth in order to be able to give the right advice and the right information to clients. And that comes even down to when we assess properties from a price analysis point of view.
And I guess perspective changes, right, throughout the buying process. A first home buyer perspective is going to be different to somebody who's a more mature purchaser over a period of time or trying to build a portfolio and investment. And so they're going to be at different levels of that data knowledge, absorption.
Yeah. And we get some clients that we say suffer from, that analysis paralysis.
Of course.
They're just looking at too much information, if you know what I mean. So we just try and really simplify it.
I get it. And we've just recently moved from, rural, and you're going into this new area, which you've got all the data, you've got the REA, you've got the insights, you've got the development portals, all of that available to you. But you just don't know the street, right?
Yep.
You just don't know if this suburb is better than this suburb. Now, everyone's got opinions, right?
Yep.
And I've made some great friends up there in the Sunshine Coast that we're working with, particularly agents. But everyone's got different ideas. They've been living there 30, 40, 50 years. They know the streets. They know the flood mitigation or the non-flood mitigation. They know they have their own opinions. And you try and go into this new area, let alone buying a property for the first time, you go into this new area, you try and understand, well, is this suburb better or that suburb better? And I found you've got to build a framework around what's really important to you. If kids are going to be at school for the next 10 years, well, do we really want to be traveling 25 minutes to the school? What's the price point? How does that, is the price point potentially overinflated by, vendors in their belief? And it's a very difficult thing to do, even for somebody who's seasoned. So if I could imagine that somebody with a first home buyer's, grant or, buying their first investment property finds it difficult.
They do. And they do require, I believe, a lot more, call it hand-holding through the process and education through the process. Whereas, upsizes or downsizes, you could almost throw into that boat as well, because a lot of them haven't transacted for so long.
Or transacted potentially into an apartment living and understanding the requirements of what the benefits of that might be.
Yeah, spot on. And, I think buyer agents is the important role they provide in situations like that is making clients understand get some clarity around what's going to be right for you going forward, because it's too expensive to get it wrong, basically.
Right. Especially in Australia.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Well, our pricing's ridiculous. Although, again, I'm looking at Victoria. We're on this roadshow at the moment, and I've really wanted to come to Victoria. Both myself and Brand have lived in Victoria over the past 10 years at different times. And we were just saying beforehand, when I left Victoria, it was just before COVID hit. And Victoria was positioned as this, Melbourne effectively, but Victoria as well, was positioned as this, leading vibrant city that was taking on the world, was, taking on Sydney almost bang for bang. And then I've gone back to Brisbane, always loved Brisbane, always been, the third cousin for, to the other two. And now my mind's blowing that the Gold Coast is so incredibly valued and sought after around the world. And then Victoria, which is just this epicenter of vibrancy, really it is. We were talking the best food. I went to the barber this morning, the best barbers, the best coffee. I said, Brand, if we get a coffee, make sure it's a good one. It's very difficult not to get a good coffee. We know that. Some of the best suburbs, the best restaurants, the Formula Ones here. This city and this state is the wineries. If you travel 15 minutes out. And it's gone through a bit of a challenge, right? Over the past five years, and I look at it and say, well, they've got to. These prices aren't right. Australia is, to your point, is very expensive, but Victoria just seems undervalued.
And there's no doubt it's gone through a fairly sort of stable, call it, period over the last few years since COVID. However, having been involved in property and watching cycles, I do feel that that's going to change.
It has to, right?
And
Like $1.5 million for a place in Albert Park. Now I know it's small, right? 200 and plus square meters, and coming from Australia, from Brisbane, where minimum sort of like 405s, and even that feels small. It's just like it's 7 minutes to the best city in Australia.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. And what would the equivalent be in Sydney? What would it be worth?
Double Bay or Rose Bay.
We're talking multi-million dollar properties. So where there's no doubt there's good value in Melbourne at the moment if you're in it for the long haul. Whether you're owner occupiers, whether you're upsizing or downsizing, if you're doing it in the same market, it really doesn't matter.
Sure.
From an investment perspective, I see some really good opportunities out in Melbourne at the moment.
And what sort of mistakes are people making that you see from time to time? Like, and is it more repeated? Is it around not having the right information and jiving in, or are you seeing people make mistakes in the buying?
It varies from not being able to correctly assess a property, not being able to correctly read what agents are saying, not being able to read what sort of competition you might have. But it is. And it's quite complex to actually get all that information. So the mistakes are, generally pretty common, and that is not doing the appropriate research to understand A, what a property is likely to achieve in the open market, and B, the process and what competition you might have.
And has there been that issue with underbidding and overinflating the pricing?
Underquoting.
Sorry.
Oh, look, underquoting, that's an interesting topic. And, it's the topic's been going on for years. And, Consumer Affairs, are doing what they can, I guess, in order to try and,
I think it's a criminal offence now.
Yeah, it is. And there's some, hefty fines being.
Has it mellowed more that the prices have come back and the not so much the scarcity?
Look, it still does happen. I do feel it does happen, particularly in auction campaigns, which is, predominantly what we're talking about, I think, on this subject. Not often will I assess a property in the price guide that the selling agents have provided. In fact, I can't remember the last time I did. For an auction campaign, that is. Perhaps a little bit different in private sales or expression of interest or sale by set dates. But it's still... The interesting thing is, and let's just use an example. If a property is going to auction and they're quoting, 1 to 1.1 million, if, during the auction, the property is announced as hitting the vendor's reserve price and being on the market, so everyone's playing for keeps now. Now, if it's at 1.1 or less, is that underquoting? It's an interesting question. I don't even know if I know the answer, because in theory, no, it's not, because that's what the vendor's reserve was. Sure. However, we've assessed the property as being somewhere between 115 and 1.2, which it ended up getting to. So it's like, a selling agent's doing the wrong thing necessarily. I don't necessarily think so, not if the reserve price is in the price guide.
And having a buyer's agent, does that protect the buyer more so? Do we have?
Well, I think it absolutely educates them.
Yeah.
So a property being quoted 1 to 1.1, if we've done our assessment, and the client's got a budget of 1.1, thinking they can potentially buy this property, they will have absolute certainty that they won't be buying that property, and if they did, we'll be doing cartwheels in front of the property, because it'll be a bargain, basically.
And do you find yourself going into more auctions down here, or what would be the percentage split between, say, auctions or going in direct negotiation?
We love our auctions in Melbourne. I think we're one of the auction capitals of the world, and we always have been. I think it's actually increasing, because I think I've noticed over the 25 odd years that outer suburbs generally preferred the private sale sort of scene, but we're now finding that, even 25, 30 Ks out, where there's a lot of auctions sort of being held. We probably buy 70%-ish, at auction or before auction.
Before, okay.
Or even post-auction if it gets passed in. But not many properties we bid for at auction get passed in, and that's generally because they're
You're ready
the
to
better
close.
properties. Yeah, or they're the better properties, essentially, or there's competition on it, which is generally the case. So
I think something else that's quite important that you brought up, and Leon sort of mentioned this early. Queensland, obviously, flooding is an issue. So due diligence, very important part that you bring to the table. What are some of the common things that you, as a buyer's agent in a Melbourne market or a Victorian market, look for in terms of risk assessment?
Oh, absolutely. So there's a whole range of things, and there's different components of property that we look at. And the first one is the land component, and we check obviously if there's any issues with the land or the shape of the land and slopes on the land, as well as easements and so forth. That's particularly important if people are planning to either extend or redevelop, or add a dwelling or a granny flat and so forth. Then it comes to the area itself, and you mentioned flood zones. Well, we've got some flood zones here as well, and they've often got special building overlays over them, so it's really important to understand where they are. So we'll know that before we even get to the property, if you know what I mean. So, and then when it comes to, so once we covered the land component, we look at the actual property, and this is obviously, we've already established that the position and the area is okay. Then we look at the property and obviously go through it and make sure we're comfortable that it sort of ticks a lot of the boxes for the client. And I say a lot of the boxes because it's very hard to find the perfect property.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever bought the perfect property for myself, so it's very hard. So there's always some compromise, but the idea is to tick off on as many of those boxes as possible. And then things like building inspections, pest inspections, getting contracts reviewed.
Even planning permission, I think.
Absolutely. If we need to make inquiries with councils or even get some advice from town planners or whatever it is, we sort of cover our bases so the client's absolutely informed, and that allows us to, make informed negotiation recommendations as well, and then put them into action.
Well, I mean, with the omission of a buyer's agent, that could be a very costly mistake.
Yep, absolutely. So. I often say to clients they've already earned their fee when I'm advising them just not to buy a property.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean. So, and we do that, obviously at the expense of earning a fee, but we do that because, we want to do the right thing, but it's really important that clients do well out of it. One thing I've learnt is you do the right thing by clients at the beginning, there is a really, really good chance that you're either going to get repeat or referred business.
Referral. I'm sure a lot of your business is referral business, right? Like you've been in it for so long that, the children are now coming and buying homes. Their friends are buying homes.
Yep.
They want to buy another home and they
do.
don't really know that area or.
Yeah. And I'm now buying, for first home buyers who are children of clients that I bought for, 15, 20 years ago. And, it's a feel-good thing that obviously, the family continues to refer and utilise the service.
So with a name like National Property Buyers, you are national. You've got operations in Adelaide.
Yes, we do. So we've got an office in Brisbane and an office in Adelaide. They followed shortly after the Melbourne office opened.
And do you generally find yourself focused around local area? So you will predominantly work in Melbourne,
absolutely,
Victoria.
Yeah. What we do have is a lot of, in particular, investor clients, but it also happens with owner-occupiers who are relocating. We've got a lot of crossover clients, so particularly clients who want to diversify their portfolios or even avoid land tax in Melbourne or Victoria and want to buy elsewhere. So we're able to sort of facilitate a really easy and soft introduction. And it's easy because the service is the same. It's just the local knowledge is different.
That's what your focus is
100%.
rather than being a national.
So you wouldn't want me buying you a property in Brisbane or Adelaide. I can assure you of that.
But there's always a lot of people, I believe, having lived here before, that come from, let's say, Adelaide to move to Melbourne. And so your counterpart there could introduce you to them. And then likewise, you have people from Melbourne, let's say, moving to Brisbane to retire or something along those lines.
Absolutely. And as I said, as the business has gone year on year, that's happening more and more, just because obviously the client base continues to increase year on year. So there's more of that happening.
One thing I really wanted to understand from you is you've been negotiating properties for a very long time. With that art of negotiation, right? You're in the midst of it. What is a buyer paying for? What is that skill set that you have in the negotiation? What is the advantage that you have within the negotiation? Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah. Well, I think good negotiation starts with understanding the value. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the first crucial step: understanding where the property sits. Because that's going to then sort of lead to the next step on how we're going to start this negotiation, depending on what type of campaign and what timeframes we might have, and what the asking price is. Right. So there's a lot of sort of variables that are sort of moving along the way. Clients often ask me, are you going to be able to save me the fee when you negotiate? Well, that's a real hard one to answer as well. But let's firstly understand where the value of the property is, and then I'll get to work on securing it for the lowest price possible. Now, when it comes to what value we bring, probing the agent, and honestly, discussions between a buyer agent and a selling agent are very different to
a buyer
and the selling agent, if you know what I mean. So, so it's really understanding where the vendor's expectations are, what their situation might be. Do they have certain preferences for settlement? All this. So there's a lot of probing that goes on that I don't think a lot of buyers do. But it's just all setting the scene on what's going to be our next step. And when it comes to negotiating, no negotiations. I mean, there's been plenty of similar ones, but they're all different depending on the information that's at hand.
It's that knowledge of historical engagement
Yeah.
is how potentially the selling agent's going to act, or these
Absolutely.
other factors that are happening within the vendor
Yep.
that you found out that maybe the buyer hasn't found out. You've been able to compile all of that fairly rapidly,
Yep.
plus ask the right questions, and then
Absolutely.
deliver that back.
And then all of that information coupled with our assessment will determine what the strategy is going to be. And the idea is to put our clients in pole position, maximise their chances of success. I mean, we want them to win it. We've gone through the process. They want it. We want them to get it. But our job is to get it for the lowest possible price. So it's about then coming up with a strategy that we feel is going to do that while still maximising their chances. And often, understanding the rules and the process that the selling agents are going to go through is really important, because they all do things differently. This is a thing well, certainly in Melbourne, and I dare say it probably happens in the other capital cities as well.
Auctioneers are different. The pressure that the estate agent is putting on during that moment.
Yes.
You have to watch things like The Block or any of these other auction shows, and I know it's all theatre, but you've got an agent who's acting for the vendor. You've got an auctioneer who's acting for the vendor. So already it's 2 on 1. If might have a few other selling agents in there trying to can you come up? Can you come up? Can you come up?
Yeah, that's right.
So it's really emotional, I guess, for a lot of people being in that position.
It is. It is, and I guess that's the other thing that we bring to the table, that we're not emotional about this. We've got a job to do, and it's business basically. So let's get this deal done if we can at the right level. And you can keep being emotional, but we don't want those emotions coming in,
Tearing over here right in front of the selling agent.
because and it never happened again. But very early on in my career, a client followed me in after an auction, after the property had actually passed in. I did ask them to wait outside, but they were adamant that they were coming in with me. And the reserve price was provided, and the client said, "I'll take it." So I had no chance to actually help them actually get the property any less.
So you could have maybe sold him 50, 20, whatever $1,000.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was confident I could have.
Could have, yeah.
But they were emotional about it. This is a thing. So
they don't want to lose. They don't want somebody else to trump them.
That's right. Yep. And there were other bidders, so there was potentially other competition. But anyway, I guess the thing I learned was I didn't even get an opportunity to try and save them some money. They're wrapped. They bought it. They was still within their budget. And but yeah, I learnt my lesson. On a pass-in scenario, client must stay outside.
And let's talk about how when you're engaging with that client, what are you doing with them? You're finding out what their budget is. You're finding out the areas that they want to live. Obviously, there's a whole gamut of questions that you go through.
Yeah.
Is that advice time for them, or is it more of taking asking the probing questions?
I think it's a bit of both,
Yeah.
because particularly if they're unrealistic about what they're after, it's important that we get them into realistic zone pretty quickly. No, it's about understanding a little bit about them and what's really important to them, because they may have their preferred suburbs they want to live in. They're obviously going to have. So we work with the 3 Ps, right? The price, property, and position. So price is usually fixed. So clients normally come to us saying, "I've got a budget up to X." Then it's a matter of matching the position with the actual property. So let's talk about what property you'd like, and let's talk about what area you'd like. And let's see if there's a match there, because if there's not, we're going to need to do something. Either you increase your budget or... And during that discussion, it's, okay, have you thought about this area? Have you thought about that area? And often they haven't. And sometimes it's a matter of actually getting the process started. So we call it our preliminary search. That's the first one, particularly for clients not exactly sure where they want to be. And the idea is to throw some things at them, even a little bit out of left field, to either rule in or rule out. So... and often we're buying in a suburb that they may not have even thought of.
And I mean, that is important, because it's like in product making, it's either going to be high quality, high price, or in a short time, or a long time, a lower quality and a cheaper price. And so they do have to make that reasonable decision around location, around price. If the price is probably generally capped with most people that are buying, right? Like the bank's going to tell you how much your earnings are.
Most of our clients have got.
They've got an understanding of where that budget is. So then there's a lot of suburbs around. I know we'll get into AFL teams shortly, but and favouritism. I probably should have started with that. I was told by Brand, which is the better. I've got a rugby supporter, I've got an AFL supporter, and I'm Switzerland, I think, in the middle.
Well, you're a Formula One.
Well, I'm a Formula One. That's why that's not why we're down here, Brad. So, you've got to make they've got a set budget. They know what they can spend, but they might not have thought about different locations.
Different styles of property. As I said, if it's not matching up, something's going to need to give you either lower the expectation on the.
Can you come down to a 3-bedroom? Can you live out of that?
That's right. Can we do with a 3 and a study? Can we do a 3 and correct? And
the compromise is usually, if you're going more inner suburbs, there's going to have to be some budget for construction.
Yep.
There's going to be changes. Properties around the inner suburbs of Melbourne, usually the loo or the toilet is still outside.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's going to be a higher price.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's Melbourne's quite unique. Like when I was living down here, again, this would have been just prior to COVID. Places like Elwood were up and coming. Armidale is down there, I think, as well. And there was this, I guess, east-west divide, much the same as they have in Sydney. We don't really have it in Brisbane. We have a north-south divide, but it's not an articulation of wealth or status. It's more just where you grew up.
Yeah.
Shout out to the south side of Brisbane. But if you're down here, I would imagine that residents and owners and buyers can be quite colloquial towards those particular suburbs. So how do you go about navigating them to say, hey, well, have you thought about this particular one? Or have you thought about moving west a little bit or moving south a little bit? Is that a challenge? And how do you get them thinking?
Not so much a challenge. It's more, I find it best to actually show them a property in the area to go have a look at. And then I encourage them to drive around or go have a coffee at one of the cafes and just get a feel for the area. Don't just do a drive-by and say, no, not for me. Which you can, but that's what I encourage. Particularly if I'm reasonably confident that it's something they should consider. I'm not saying they have to buy there, but
I don't know if you ever saw that show in the UK where they would, find them 3 houses or 4 houses. They'd drive to each one of them. They'd set their budget, and there'd be a male and female
relocation.
Relocation.
Location.
One of those, but along that.
There's a lot of property shows on TV.
Yeah, there is, and You would see them go, and they would go to different areas, and the house might not be quite right, but the area would be. So it's really that is really important. I've been doing that on the Sunshine Coast actually, and going between the different areas. And what was originally a non-negotiable to me, right? It sounds a little bit pompous, but the non-negotiable to me was to be no more than 15 minutes from Hastings Street. But that was my place where I used to love going on holiday. So I had this vision that that's where it needed to be. Now, and everybody who lived at the Sunshine Coast said, why would you want to go anywhere near Hastings Street? And I'm like, of course you would. And now I live up there. I'm like, why would you want to go anywhere near Hastings Street? And I think that's the same thing with Victoria, because, as you start to open your mind, and you can get out that a little bit further. Lilydale, for instance, not too far out, right? It's beautiful and green, but a lot of people would be like, I'm not going to live all the way out there, or heading down towards the Mornington Peninsula. But the moment you take those, I guess, blinders off, and you do go out and have your coffee, like you say, and go to visit the local bakery, and get to know it, it can be quite changing.
A lot depends on their employment as well, and how far they have to travel, or whether they have to catch transport or drive in and out, if you know what I mean. So location does matter. I was talking to a client the other day. So we talk about, you spoke about Lilydale. Well, there's another suburb called Eltham, which is a beautiful suburb. I could live in Eltham. I love it. I don't live far from Eltham, but the problem with Eltham, it's one street in and one out, one lane in, one lane out. So peak hour, it's just diabolical. Still a brilliant place to live. However, I spoke to the clients about it, just encourage them to go there at peak hour, because they had to travel to the city, and they really liked it. But now they're having second thoughts, and I thought that was an important thing for them to understand.
I think that's an interesting part of a segue in around travelling into town, right? And just this week, the government's come out and put in the new law that 2 days a week, it's now in stone or legislated, we're going to be legislated that you'll have the opportunity to work from home. What do you think that's going to do to prices and all positions and that mindset of potentially?
I think it's already started happening, because I think there's a lot of employers out there that have got the or allow their employees the flexibility of at least a day or two to work from home. So I think that it's already started happening. I think it's now just sort of legislated, and there's plenty of employers out there, I'm sure, that say, no, you've got to be in the office, 5 days a week or whatever it is. But I think it's already happening. A lot of clients already work the odd day or two from home. Some of them more.
Yeah, and the other half are all moved up to Queensland.
I think we've certainly seen it more so in Melbourne. Like, out of all the major cities in Australia, has had a bit more slower return to office than, let's say, a Sydney or a Brisbane has. And I guess my question to you would be, how important, when a buyer now looks at a new property, are they looking at things like maybe a home office or additional space because they're going to spend more time there? And then I guess the following question to that is, how has it actually impacted prices closer to the city? So maybe apartment living or inner suburbs.
There's definitely been a trend since COVID for clients needing either a home office or at least a space where they can have their desk. I mean, we've always wanted a desk in our homes, but now I think people are more so wanting a dedicated space. So, what a 3-bedroom home would have sufficed 10 years ago, but now we need 3 or 4 or 3 in a study, if you know what I mean. So there's definitely been a trend. Clients, in particular, even first home buyers, owner occupiers, upsizers, whatever they are, needing a space to put their office or work from home. In terms of inner city, I don't think there's been a lot of change really in the inner city apartment sort of market. I don't think it's had a big impact at all, particularly when they can get into the city pretty quickly anyway. So working from home isn't as important, I don't think. But we don't get as many briefs to buy apartments and have that work from home space.
I'd like to stay on the track of advice though, because we're in talking with somebody with such a wealth of knowledge, 20 plus years of industry experience, and run your own business for the past 15, and done it successfully well, gone national. You've seen all the waves, you've seen all the trends. So, let's sort of break it into sort of 3 categories. Let's go with like the first home buyers. Let's go with the more mature buyers, and then let's have a look at the investors. What's some sort of advice that you would have for those first home buyers that are coming into the market that are sort of sitting there and they're like, there's no way that I can get a property that's 30 times my current salary. You know, what sort of advice would you have?
Oh, I mean, the first piece of advice is get some clarity around your budget. That's the first thing. And once you've got that, is, you know, your first home buyers, it's really important they get on the ladder, because, you know, one thing history tells us is that prices do go up. They will go up. And it's really important that they get in and they're realistic about their expectations, because there are some first home buyers that, not quite sure, either not quite sure what they want, or they have just got this unrealistic expectation.
Okay, so I've got to go into my first home. The only thing that I can afford is maybe a $400,000 unit.
Yep.
Maybe I have to get it with my girlfriend or my mate, or maybe I'll get the bank of mum and dad to top me up.
Are you buying in Bali?
But I'm scared. I'm scared because I might be stuck buying this apartment, one-bedroom apartment that's a shoebox that's going to have no capital appreciation over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and I guess that's where our value kicks into gear, because we sort of will go through that with the client. So, okay, if your budget's $400,000, you can either get your one better, or could we go out a little bit further and get you into a two better?
And with this world that has to have everything yesterday, right? This demand of entitled need and desire. Are first-time buyers thinking that way? Are they thinking that I've got to go to Bendigo and maybe get a bigger property?
Some of them do, maybe not Bendigo, but some of them are more than happy to start their first property and their lives even in the outskirts of Melbourne on something a bit bigger with a bit of a land component. Some of them are, Some of them are adamant they want to live in a city. That's where their life is. That's what their lifestyle dictates, which is fine. Others are prepared to sort of almost, buy just a good investment that they can live in as well, because that will often then catapult them into their next purchase. And, we have those discussions in particular with first home buyers who are thinking, of an apartment or could you go there? Now, in the end, it's their decision, and we'll respect whatever decision that is, but they'll have to live with it.
You've got to take the advice. You can lead the horse to water, but you can't.
That's exactly
make
right.
them proverbially drink. And so then, so that we've first-time buyers, get your budget right, get your expectations right.
Yep.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yep.
Then if we move to those more mature buyers, they've got some equity built up.
Yep.
They want to increase their property, their positioning in the property. They want something more
bigger or yep.
Sort of advice for them.
The first piece of advice is work out whether you're going to sell first and then buy, or buy and then sell. I reckon that's one of the biggest decisions that they need to make.
Because of the anxiety they've got if they don't transact at the right time?
Yeah. What happens if you sell and you don't find the right property? What are you going to do? So they're you know what I mean? Because, or if you do, how are you going to fund it, sort of thing? Well, you need to work this out.
The bridge between.
Absolutely. Because then I think that will then dictate what happens next. Okay, so you're going to start searching for a property, or you're going to put your property on the market to know exactly how much money you've got, and then you obviously get to work on buying. And we go through all that with clients. So, what the options are, and selling, and then selling on a long settlement to allow time to buy, or do we buy on a long settlement? And I've personally done this myself. So I bought on a long settlement,
Love it.
Gave my self plenty of time to get my property on the market and sold. I had the settlement date. That's what it was. And it was interesting because when I did it, I finally realised what clients go through, because it was such an emotional and stressful time.
No, I don't think enough people understand that deals can be architected to suit both the vendor and also the buyer. And I guess that's what you bring to the table, is being able to think about those sorts of things. Well, maybe we've got a family here that doesn't really want to, they want to move during the Christmas holidays rather than move in October.
Yeah.
So maybe we can get a settlement that'll go through to January and they can finish the festive season, and having a buyer's agent there is going to help them articulate that in the right way.
And I think, if you get the right buyer's agent, they'll be absolutely honest as well, because a lot will also depend on the type of property you need to sell. And is it sellable, or do we need to do work to it, or is it compromised in any way? Because that often will sort of influence the advice we
course.
provide, because if it might take a while to sell, maybe we need to just get that sold first, because if you can't fund the purchase, if you know what I mean. So.
Okay, and my final one is around investors. So advice to investors. You know, these guys, they've already got their own PPR. Maybe they're investing, whatever they are, but they want to buy an investment property coming into Victoria. Let's say that. Let's say, because it looks to me from an investment market a great opportunity. Almost stagnant. Look, over the past 5 or 6 years, you know, you were on this up and coming trajectory. I think we all know that that's going to have to change in some way. It's just too great a city to not, or too great a state. So yeah, tell me about what would
the first thing I would say is to an investor is focus on capital growth. Going to make more money out of capital growth than you are out of rental return. Of course, it's always finding the right balance in terms of the yield we're getting for our investor clients. But generally speaking, you know, the wealth comes from capital growth.
like maybe three or low single-digit percentages around return, but you're going to at a capital growth, you could be up around.
Yeah. And it's it's always been the general rule of thumb that the higher the capital growth prospects, the lower the yield, and vice versa. So the higher the yield, the lower the capital growth prospects. A good example is, you know, inner city apartments in South Bank in the high-rise towers. You're going to get a great rent if you can get it rented, because there's so many of them. So the yield will be great, but there's been, you know,
capital growth might still be the same price, if not come back.
Absolutely.
Over a 5 or 10 year period.
Yeah. So, and the other thing with investors is it depends on, you know, where they're at in their investment life, basically. And what I mean by that is we are starting, and even last year we started selling through our vendor advocacy service properties that we'd purchased 15, 20 years ago for clients, in order for them to purchase then income producing assets, because they're getting to the stage where they want to start thinking about retirement and you know, funding their own retirement later on. Sure, so whether it's high yielding, although we're still not big on, you know, South Bank apartments, but that's where we start looking at perhaps commercial property for them in order to diversify their portfolios, but get them out of that the capital growth and get the income going for them to prepare for retirement.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I'd like to, this season on the Buyers Agents podcast, not only has Brand joined us for our Melbourne exhibition, and you've obviously met Brand through the engagement at buyersagents.com.au. But Brand's going to take over the rapid fire questions. And this is where we get to know you a little bit and your thoughts around areas and spaces. And so he's going to look at it from a perspective of price brackets and get to understand the Victorian market a little bit better. Yep. So from price brackets, what you like and where you like. Generally, it's about Suburb. Yep. But over to you, Brand.
So Anthony, top 3 suburbs where you would buy right now, price brackets being 0 to 2 million, 2 million to 5 million, and 5 million plus. And then I guess the following question to that would be why?
Okay, so 0 to 2 million, that's a big range. So 0 to 2. So let's call it put a circle around $1 million. I'd be looking probably inner northern suburbs at the moment, where we're seeing really good value.
Could you name them for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So suburbs such as Reservoir, parts of Reservoir. Now, Reservoir is a big suburb, but I still think there's good value in certain pockets there.
First home buyers, $1 million?
Well, not many first home buyers buying at $1 million. Okay. First home buyers, you know, perhaps out west, you could start looking at a Werribee. With budgets, you can still buy houses in Werribee or Hoppers Crossing for, you know, $700,000 up to $800,000. If, you know, you want to keep in the north, I think Laylaw, Thomastown, certainly some good options there for first home buyers. That'd be sub 1 million. In the east, need to go a fair way out in the east, a bit like how you do when you go south. But places like Baronia, Bayswater, Ferntree Gully have all got really good potential going forward, I feel. There's been a lot of works going on to all the infrastructure around there.
And great access routes to the city too.
Yeah, there is, and there's a lot of work going on in Melbourne at the moment. The freeways are terrible, particularly for buyer agents who travel all around Melbourne all the time. But I think it's going to make a huge difference in a few years' time. Absolutely. Down south, Frankston, Seaford, still seeing some good value there, and even some of the bayside suburbs such as Bomb Beach and Chelsea. So that'd be in that $0 to $2 million.
And if you went into the 2 to 5 million bracket, where are we sort of sitting? I mean, again, that's a big bracket as well. You might have to refine some of these brackets.
Yeah. That is a big bracket.
Sounds like we've been in Sydney too long.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that's right. So, but let's call it a 2 to 3 or even 2 to 4 sort of budget. Probably stick to the eastern suburbs, places like even Chadstone, Burwood. There's going to be a lot happening in Burwood with the new train station happening there. Mount Waverley, which has got benefit of really good secondary college zones and so forth. But sticking along the train lines, I would
Hyatt, I believe.
Hyatt, yeah, absolutely. Hyatt and Cheltenham. I still think there's some value there as well.
Recently bought there.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I liked Hyatt a few years ago, and it's still pretty good.
Hamilton, I think, is another one that's sort of adjacent to it.
Yeah, and that's when we're sort of moving into higher price bracket as well. So as we start moving into the 4 to 5 and plus, probably those Hamptons, Hampton East, Sandringham, sort of places would be my picks.
And where would you see that 5 million bracket plus? Is that still sort of Brighton area or?
Yeah, absolutely. Brighton, Hawthorn, Kew.
Hawthorn Q.
Yep. Would
The old
probably
South
be
Yarra,
my
the old favourites.
favourite. Yeah. Yep.
Toorak.
South Yarra and
probably 20
Toorak,
million
it's funny.
plus.
It's either, I think South Yarra and Toorak are very different to Hawthorn Kew, I believe, from a field point of view. So that would be my phone. We tend to find people who are wanting to live in South Yarra, Toorak, don't want to be living in, even though it's not that far away.
What's that little Italian restaurant in Kew? Do you know that? It's a well-known one.
Melbourne, there's about 400.
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's
We've got a lot of-
amazing. It's amazing. But I've been to Kew a few times. I think
Yep.
stunning, Hawthorn, beautiful. You know,
Yep.
bigger blocks, beautiful.
Absolutely. Really
beautiful
nice
properties.
period homes that have been renovated. There's a good mix of housing. There's
Young, the tennis club's great.
Yep. There's modern properties as well as the older style that have been.
We're also talking many, many millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
But the traffic there used to be a real pain. I mean, have they diffused much of that now?
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
Traffic is painful.
Well, everyone's going to be working from home now.
Traffic
right?
is pretty painful all around Melbourne at the moment, I must admit. So.
Although Melbourne, in terms of Australian cities, have always had great transport solutions. They've always had the trams and the trains have been pretty good.
Yep.
There were talks many years ago about obviously Geelong and Bendigo having that sort of speed rail.
Yeah.
Has anything come about with that?
Well, there's always talk of speed rails. There's talk of rails going out to the airport. We're yet to see it all sort of.
It is odd.
happen.
It is odd for a city. not to
And
have a
look,
train.
we do have the trams. In terms of rail transport and trains, I'm not sure if it's kept up with the population growth, though, which is what they're trying to fix now. I think with new train stations being built and suburban rail loops and new freeways and so.
Well, you have to. I mean, it's the sporting capital of the world
It is.
and the cultural capital of
It
Australia.
is. Yes.
I'd say cultural. Sporting capital, that's a stretch.
Well, hang on.
No. So
I'm talking
I
somebody
think there's a lot of jealous.
It's Brisbaneites that are jealous with the next decade of the Olympics.
Non-executive chairman of the Brisbane 2032 over here.
So, well, I've got to make sure that the Brisbane 32 gets off to without a hitch. I don't know if we're going to do that too well, but it is. Melbourne is such an eclectic city. It's such a place that invites people. I just mentioned the barber earlier. Just such an inviting person. So diverse, multicultural city. You can get anything in Melbourne. Any type of food, any type of sport, as you say. Now that we're towards the end of the podcast, we can actually ask you who's your favourite AFL team, so we don't offend anybody at the start of the podcast when they switch off.
Yep.
So, who do you support?
Collingwood. The Collingwood Magpies.
Collingwood.
Yes.
And who did you support when you were down here?
I still support Sydney Swans
Okay.
because they're originally South Melbourne.
Yes, and that's where you.
I used
and
to
that's
live
where
in
you
Port
live.
Melbourne.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And do you follow the AFL?
We're the premiers, aren't we? Oh, that's right.
Two in a row.
And what in RL? So obviously I'm a big Storm fan.
Big Storm
as well.
fan. Look, that's also Brisbane. Look, most of them are Queenslanders, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Storm have just been in.
Well, Suncorp's our second home ground.
It
basically.
is, and all of them are Maroons players, but well, not all of them anymore. But
Most of them. Yep.
they've done an incredible job over the past decade as well, ever since their inception, really.
Yeah. Yep.
I should send you my Storm card.
Storm card.
Sorry.
Oh, for those, yes, for those that can't see on the
Oh,
podcast
right.
or
Okay.
listening,
Is that you?
He's got a picture of him brand as a sports card in a Storm's
Collector's item, that is.
Ah.
a Storm a uniform. It is not a collector's item. Maybe we'll get him to sign it after the pod. Well, Anthony, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you. The wealth of knowledge that you've got, both of the buyers agents industry, but also of the local Victorian market, is unprecedented, and we're just happy to have the opportunity to share that with you. Thank you for being a supporter of us over the past 3 months. We've really appreciated it. We love what's happening with your profile online. On buyersagents.com.au, and we look forward to continue to help you promote that and push that out, and be able to help more and more Victorian buyers in their pursuit, and nationally as well. National property buyers are actually sponsoring this podcast, but that's just something that, as a gift to you, making sure that we can show the national property buyers nationally to the buyers that are out there, whether they're in Victoria or Adelaide or Brisbane, or even if they're in any of those cities that aren't, that potentially you can put them into, at least give them some advice about how to structure their purchasing process along the way. But yeah, thank you very much it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you.
Thanks for having me. It's been great meeting you, and look forward to a long-term relationship with buyeragents.com.au.